The LUMO Conservancy set up the lodge with a local partner and USAID money, and they had it up and running in 2004. The model, for various reasons, didn't work out, and we came in 2009 as a tourist operator leasing the community's facilities. So all the fixed assets 100% belong to the community, and when we leave, it is theirs to do either their own business or lease on to somebody else. So it's really important, any development we do during the period, etc., belongs to the community. It is a community project. We are just the guardians for a short period of time. So the model is very, very simple one that we use here. There are 3 fee structures earning money for the community. First of all, there's the sanctuary fees for the use of the wilderness. And the community uses those fees to run the wilderness, do the maintenance on roads, on general infrastructure, pay for the anti-poaching and the rangers generally, and then to run their administration, which is very, very important, because if the admin doesn't work, the community can't get anything. Then there's a lease fee, which I pay for the lodge and the hill. It's an annual fee, and we have a 25-year lease on this facility, of which 10 years have gone. And then there's a third fee structure, which is the bed night fee. So they get currently 10% of any fee paid by clients staying at Lions Lodge. This was a very basic and simple structure used throughout a lot of Kenya. More and more different models are coming to suit individual locations. And actually, we are, with the African Wildlife Foundation, reviewing whether we've got the best system to ensure that the community get fair compensation for not using the land for their cattle and other uses. So we've been here 10 years. Unfortunately, Kenya went through a rough time with the 2007 elections, with Europe collapsing financially so that tourists couldn't get here, and then various terrorist-related activities. So it's been a tough time for the community who've set aside their land, and then there hasn't been much return over that period. Since the last elections in Kenya, that's completely changed. Tourism is heading back to what was considered normal in the old days, and therefore the benefits should be trickling down to the grassroots. The aim of conservancies is very simple. It's got to be a relationship between the community and a business, in our case it's tourism, to ensure that the ecology remains or actually improves in some areas, so that the wildlife can thrive without affecting the ranching, because these are working ranches around here, and we mustn't forget that. So in an ideal world, there'll be huge chunks of Africa dedicated to wildlife only. The reality is you have to blend it with the working ranches. So tourism per se should be a blend, part of the blend of potential income earning for the area. With a small lodge and a big chunk of Africa, you can't expect tourism on its own to solve all the problems. So we must find ways of improving the ranching, increasing the tourist numbers or the value per guest staying, and then also looking at other means of income such as carbon credit or other things. So tourism, vital, because it kicks off the idea of preserving land, but it should be part of a general blend. This area of the Tsavo ecosystem, it is part of a major elephant migration route that in the old days went from Amboseli all the way through to Mukamazi or around and into East Tsavo. So it's a big area in terms of kilometers. It's probably 500-600 kilometer treks, 2 or 3 times a year. Now, it isn't just the elephant. If the elephant are migrating because of water or fresh grass needs, then the plains game and the lion and everything else are as well. So we're very lucky at the moment in this area. There are no fence lines for miles and miles between us and Tanzania. If the conservation model or the open ranching model changes and fences start coming up, then you are automatically altering the whole ecosystem, because the animals won't be able to move around and graze and fertilize and generally be part of the habitat. This has already happened between Amboseli and West Tsavo, which was a major part of the old migration. That's already being fenced a lot, and therefore now the migration's already lost the Amboseli element. It is now West Tsavo round through the ranches to East Tsavo. The system is delicate, and I think we all forget this. We get very little rain. Our area, we're lucky, we get about 22 inches of rain. In the other ranch areas, it's averaging 12 inches. So if through no tourism or no wildlife, other farming techniques come in, the land probably won't be able to cope with it, and we'll end up turning chunk after chunk into desert. So we need to keep that blend. Yes, they are ranchers by profession, they should be ranching, but the correct numbers and the correct locations, just like their grandfathers did. You move with the water, you move with the grazing. And the wildlife will do the same automatically if we don't fence it. So we have to preserve it. The biggest change probably in my generation is that the TV and the films of wildlife have become so good. And therefore, the people around the world are seeing this incredible spectacle that we have here. Having said that, to get them actually on the ground in the vehicle or walking is a different experience. But at least they're arriving nowadays having some idea of what wildlife is. And then the wow factor can take over. So we absolutely need to preserve. And the world is getting better and better at understanding climate change, etc., etc. So some people see it as an opportunity, maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity. Come over, see this thing that they've watched on TV, experience it, and hopefully tell their kids about it, etc. We need to preserve it. Yeah, LUMO's really blessed. It's on the edge of West Tsavo and part of the corridor. But other than that, we have incredible variation from the hill that the bluff's on to the grass plains below. So it's my belief that in the Tsavo ecosystem, we have the greatest variety of plains game and other game available. And at times of the year, we're actually second to the Mara in terms of numbers and variety. It's really interesting because everybody just assumes Tsavo's elephant and giraffe and zebra. We're not. We're about all the small things that also go on. And here in LUMO, because of the vegetation and the vastness of the plains, we have the whole variety here, which is pretty unique other than Mara. So it's not all about the big lion or whatever, it's variety. So the conservation areas, the conservancies, we are allowed to follow local rules. So the national parks, they quite rightly have restrictions because they have a lot of people, a lot of vehicles, etc. So in these conservancies, and LUMO in particular, we can offer walking safaris, we can offer bush breakfast, night driving, and general walks with the rangers to learn about the small things which you can't see in a car. That is a huge advantage over national parks, and more travellers are beginning to understand this. So you'll find in conservancies people would like to stay at least 2 nights to experience the different activities that can be done in wild Africa. So these ranches were all around West Tsavo, or around Tsavo generally, were all hunting blocks in the old days. And the reason they were hunting blocks is because the traditional white hunters were the best conservationists in terms that they had to protect the wildlife in order for them to earn the money hunting. So when hunting was banned, there was still the need of the buffer zones around the national parks. So Mzee Kenyatta, when he was president, he started issuing the old hunting blocks into group ranches. So the idea was the ranches around the parks would be owned by the local tribes. They don't live on the ranches necessarily. They probably live up in the hills where it's more fertile, they can grow crops, the schools are there, the water's there, etc. But they have ownership. So the big thing is, if you have ownership of some land as a shareholder, because most of them are set up as businesses, then you need some form of return. Now, if cattle are grazed on your land, you should get a return for it. And if it is known that the land is delicate and you need 16 acres per cow, then you need an administration system that is going to ensure that you haven't got too many numbers to ruin the asset being the land, for future generations. Now, what has tended to happen, and LUMO is not unique in this is a Kenyan problem, is that individuals will bring in far too many cows and not pay the community through the ranch system for the grazing rights. So that brings in now straightforward financial conflict with the owners. Individuals who may be shareholders bring in too many cows, do not pay the community, and ruin the delicate landscape. So it's a lose-lose situation for the next generation, definitely. So the community have to get this balance right. And there are lots of wildlife experts out there who can help them, guide them into grazing plans, into use of land, into use of water. But at the end of the day, the community has to do it themselves. And that's the issue. So, for example, in LUMO, there's a committee that runs the wildlife sanctuary. And the committee's 9 members, 3 from each ranch that owns LUMO. Now, they are there to not only make sure that the tourists are enjoying the sanctuary, but they should be coordinating with the ranchers saying, hey guys, you've got too many cows in that area. You're turning it into a moonscape. Please get your ranching right so that the landscape can survive. And the landscape is not just the wildlife bit, it is their ranches as well. So the trick is, absent shareholders have to take ownership of their project. And they will only get ownership or feel ownership if they're getting a financial return. So the cattle boys have to have the right numbers to preserve the grass and pay the fees. The fees are straightforward, but they have to pay them. The tourists using the land have to pay their fees, and any other use of land has to pay the fees, so that the small shareholder gets ownership. It's really interesting because sometimes when you say acres and things, people don't really get it. The 3 ranches have a boundary with West Tsavo of 120 kilometers. And when you look at that, 120 kilometers in Kenya is virtually enough to get Mombasa to Voi. In Europe, at London to I don't know where, but it's a long, long distance. So as a buffer zone for the parks, these ranches are hugely important, and LUMO with it. So in terms of acres, it's over 200,000 acres, of which officially 48,000 is wildlife sanctuary. Our guests can drive anywhere in the 200,000 plus zone because the animals don't know the boundary. It's just in the 48,000 there should be more care in preserving the ecosystem, so that in the dry times the animals can come and there will be grazing for them until the rain arrives again. So it's vast. It really is. I mean, the Tsavo game parks are bigger than Wales. So we're a very small part of it, but 120 k's of protection along a park boundary is very vital. I'm a third generation Kenyan, and I was brought up in small farms in the West Rift Valley. And as kids, after every harvest, every opportunity, we went camping somewhere. So we grew up loving the bush, the sheer size of it, the animals, etc. And we grew up not even thinking that rhino was a problem. Everywhere we went, in Tsavo in particular, there were rhino everywhere. And then somebody said to me recently, before we came to Lions Bluff, your kids, or certainly your grandchildren, will not believe your stories about elephant. They won't be there. And while we still had the love of the bush and I wanted to get back involved in tourism, it was the shock that something that I grew up with was everywhere, probably wouldn't be there in 2 generations' time if we didn't do something about it. This area, I've been working at the coast for the last 25 years, so this is the area we used to pop up and camp for weekends. So when the opportunity came up to get more involved in the conservation, which just happened to be a hotel, but it could have been other things, as a family, we snapped it up straight away. If we can just not even necessarily halt some of the eco damage, but slow it down enough that the next educated generation of shareholders really cares like we care, then we'll have done our job.